Angel's Voice ASMR.
This was not a good development. Lexi was not in 100% agreement with her mother on anything, but the senator's rules were the only option at the moment. And if the choice was between them and another riot, Lexi knew which side she was on. "We should help," Lexi said. "Maybe people didn't trust that the JCPenney home store thing was actually happening. The place certainly looked like it was still a JCPenney and not a home of any sort." "Help what? The cops?" Maddie asked. "The old ladies?" "My mom." "Your mom is like the last person I'm in the mood to help." Maddie flipped her hair and glared at the cops. "My mom is the one person trying to pull this place back together," Lexi said. "Come on." Lexi didn't wait to see if Maddie followed. There used to be a nylon barrier thing, like the ones used in airports to organize crowds, near the checkout lines in the JCPenney. Lexi figured if she set them up outside, it might show people that her mother was serious about this plan and also control any crowds that hopefully showed up to register. Just as she was about to cross the threshold, a guard yelled at her. "Hey kid, stop." "I'm just going to get those barrier things," Lexi yelled back. "You need to do something to make this place look official." The guy came striding toward her. "The senator said not to allow anyone in until they registered." "The senator's my mom, and she told me to help her." It was sort of true. The guard took a few moments to process Lexi's information. "Okay, but what's your name? I have to write down everyone's name." It was like talking to a 16-bit NPC. "Alexandra Ross, as in the Senator Ross." The guy wrote something on his hand. "What, barrier things?" he asked, sounding less like a jerk. Lexi scanned the sales floor and saw one. "That," she said, pointing. The guy nodded. "I like it," he said. He switched on his walkie-talkie and told whoever was on the other end of it to collect the tension barriers from the checkout lines and set them up for crowd control outside the home stores. This whole thing is kind of this whole thing is confusing." Lexi smirked. "Sounds like my mom's doing." She instantly regretted talking badly about her mom to this guy who was supposedly the senator's underling, but he didn't seem to notice. "The chief told us to just write down people's names until we got some computer system. But so far there's just been these two old ladies and you. I'm not even sure where to tell people to go. The whole store is still full of stuff." The sales floor looked like it always did, though there were toppled racks and tables, evidence of the riot. Most of the store, however, had escaped harm. "Are there people in here?" "Security did a sweep," the guy said. "Most bolted into the service hallways. A team is searching for stragglers." "Are there bodies?" Lexi was not sure if she really wanted to hear the answer. The guy stiffened. "I'm not allowed to say anything about bodies." "Okay, that wasn't weird or anything. Why the climbing up over bodies?" His walkie-talkie bleeped. "Nice idea with the barriers," the voice barked. "Get the registrants to begin clearing the sales floor for the cots." The security guy pulled the radio from his belt. "Roger," he said. "Where should we put stuff?" "Stock rooms for now." Lexi told the guard she had a friend outside who could help. As she exited, she saw that the 4 guards who'd been lounging on the planter were setting up the barriers in front of the store. The place looked a lot more official. People were bound to come out to register now. Lexi hoped the guard would tell the senator that this had all been her idea. She may have bailed on the data entry assignment, but security had totally needed her help with the home stores. She was even being more useful out here. Now who's going to feel bad about throwing a radio at my head? Maddie was suspiciously willing to accept Lexi's invitation to clear the sales floor, and the reason for this being immediately apparent. For every rack she rolled into the stockroom, she removed an item from it and draped it around her neck. Lexi tried to ignore the shameless shoplifting, but then she caught Maddie actually changing into an entirely new outfit. We're supposed to be storing the stuff from the sales floor, not stealing it." Maddie slapped a hand to her chest in mock offense. "Stealing? Why, I'd never." She pulled a hat onto her head. "I see this as just compensation for my labor." She glanced at herself in the mirror. Is that too much? I agree. She took it off and frisbeed it into the depths of the stock area. Lexi checked to see if anyone else was around. No, they were alone. So what if Maddie was taking clothes instead of waiting for the guards to give her a new outfit? That was okay. It was one outfit. No one would even know it was gone. You should get something, Maddie said, her face lighting up. Something sexy instead of this depressing hoodie situation you seem to always have going on. No, Lexi said. I mean, I like this hoodie. Picked it out from the Abercrombie myself. Girl, that thing had a dead body lying on it all night. Maddie grabbed Lexi's sleeve and pulled her arm free of it. This hoodie must be trashed. Maddie made a good point. Okay, one outfit for each of them. No one would know. It would be totally fine. And Lexi had just revolutionized the whole home store check-in process. She deserved an outfit. The senator would totally agree. Maddie pulled an expensive-looking sweater from a pile and a pair of skinny jeans off a rack. You're what, a size 10? Lexi had no idea. Sizes were not her thing. She usually bought men's jeans. They hit her curves better. Sure, she said. Maddie tossed the pants at her. You're a 10. She looked at Lexi like something should be happening. Well, go on, before those old bags roll in another rack. Lexi did as she was told. She dropped her jeans and stuffed herself into the pants Maddie had thrown at her. They were pretty much a nightmare, hugging every inch of skin like the things were glued on. Ooh la la, the girl has legs, Maddie cooed. The sweater beamed Lexi in the forehead. Now, the piece à la résistance. Obediently, Lexi dragged off her safe, comfortable t-shirt and tugged on the sweater. It felt like delicate fur. Judging from the wispy hairs, it was made out of delicate fur. This too stuck to her skin, but in a nice way, like a hug. The only downside being that the thing revealed that Lexi had boobs like nobody's business. Maddie looked pleased with her work. Now see if the boys don't start eating each other for a piece of you. You have just described my worst nightmare. Maddie raised an eyebrow. You just haven't met the right boys. What are you two doing? A male voice barked. It was a security guard, another guy with a stun baton. He did not look pleased. Maddie put on a sad face. Don't yell at us, officer. We're just moving this big, heavy rack, and it nearly fell on my friend, and I was comforting her. Lexi froze for a moment, then realized she should be in some sort of pain. Yes, she said through gritted teeth. She grabbed her upper arm. It's very painful. The guard gave them the once-over. You change clothes? No way, said Maddie. That would be against the rules. The guard nodded toward the table behind them. Then why is your friend wearing that sweater? She bought it back before all hell broke loose. Yeah, right. Maddie slapped a hand on her hip. If she hadn't been trampled and lost her bag with the receipt in it, she could prove it. But I guess if you hadn't let this whole mall go to the crazies, she wouldn't have lost her bag. So it's just a little nasty cycle we find ourselves in. Maddie was totally out of line. Lexi had no idea what to do except shut up and try not to freak out. The guard shifted his hold on his stun stick. Maddie stared at him like she dared him to use it. Did she actually think the man wouldn't? Then, miracle of miracles, the guard turned. Just get back to clearing racks. He left them in the stockroom. Maddie burst out laughing. What the hell? Lexi cried. Come on. Like that loser was going to really do anything? He had a freaking taser. You think after everything that's happened that he's like afraid to use it? Maddie pretended to faint. Oh, big scary man with a big scary taser. Then she shoved Lexi slightly. Grow up here, dearest. Life's too short to give a crap about little things like electrocution. As Maddie sashayed out of the stockroom, Lexi tried to comprehend the last few minutes. For all her bitching at and about her mom, she had never so much as jaywalked before meeting Maddie, and what had following Maddie got her? Mortified in front of a group of guys Lexi didn't even find remotely attractive, floor burn from sliding down a bowling lane, and nearly infected with a deadly virus during a game of Dare or Dare. But without Maddie, she was alone. "Wait up," she yelped and raced after Maddie's shadow. The mall speaker was barely audible in the kitchen of the Grill and Shake. Marco, however, gleaned from what made it to his ears that the senator was serious about people checking in at the home stores. He heard, quote-unquote, assumed dead and calculation of rations. Now was the time for him to make the call. Do I stay or do I go? "We should try to check in," Ryan said, swallowing his defrosted chicken. "Dude, we're outlaws," Drew mumbled through a mouthful of reconstituted fries. "Forget outlaws," Mike said. "I am not like these other drones. I will not be part of this experiment." Marco was floored. "Experiment? Are you suggesting that our current situation is the result of a government test gone wrong?" "You really think that some terrorist would bother to attack a freaking mall?" Mike pulled another thawed chicken strip from the bag. "This has government cover-up written all over it." "We're safer if we just try to fit in," Ryan chimed in. If the three of them joined the plebes in the home stores, they would have no need for Marco's card key access services. This idea of Ryan's had to be shot down. "No," Marco stated, "bad idea. They put you in jail once. They will find another jail for you." "We could use fake names," Ryan offered. "They have a list of everyone in the mall from the first day. You think a couple of strangers appearing on the roster wouldn't attract attention?" Marco put on his most dismissive glare. "So what then?" Ryan winged the remainder of his chicken at the trash and glared back. "We live in the freaking freezer of the Grill and Shake." "We could find Reynolds. Try his escape plan," Drew said. "The mall is surrounded," Marco said. "If they had helicopters scanning the roof, you think they don't have people watching the grounds?" Mike stood. "You all are missing the point." He sat on the stainless steel countertop. "This mall is a death trap. Our only goal is to survive until whatever the hell is going on ends. If we really are dealing with the flu, then the key is to keep ourselves isolated. We find a hole and we stay in it." Drew kicked a plastic bucket. "This sucks." "It's better than being dead." No one argued with Mike. "Okay," Marco said, "so we find a suitable hole and put you in it?" "What about you?" Ryan asked, eyebrows knit in a scowl. "Aren't you hiding out with us?" "I'm your eyes and ears," Marco said. "Someone's got to keep his head above ground to watch for security and stay on top of the situation." Wow, this was working out better than he expected. The three would be entirely dependent on him for everything: food, water, intel. If any problem should arise for him and Shay, he could convince Mike to sneak out of his hidey hole to resolve it based on whatever lie Marco thought would best motivate him. And the douche would never be the wiser. Better yet, Shay would never know that Ryan was even in the mall. "I better go check in," Marco said, pushing himself up from where he'd been scrunched on the floor between two large empty containers. "Cut off for check-ins, not for another half hour," Mike said, glancing over his hunched shoulder. "I have to check on someone in the med ward." Marco brushed off his jeans. "I'll be back in an hour, then we can move down to the hiding place I have in mind." Mike nodded. "We'll gather supplies from the freezer." The coast was clear outside the fridge. Marco crossed the kitchen, pushed through the service door, and started down the dim hallway. "I thought you were alone in the mall," Ryan said. Marco nearly jumped out of his skin. The kid was near silent in his climbing slippers. "I told you to wait here until I come back." "I told Mike I would collect supplies from the med ward in case any of us got sick again." "Again?" Marco couldn't help the goose flesh that prickled out on his arms at the idea that one of the douches was contagious. "I had the flu," Ryan said, with a touch of pride in his voice. Marco took larger steps, tried to put a bit more real estate between him and the potentially infectious douche. "It's not a bad idea," Marco said. "So who's in the med ward?" Ryan sped up to keep pace with Marco. "My girlfriend," Marco said, wondering how hard to twist the knife and deciding. The harder the better. "I think you know her, Shayla?" That took the jock down a few pegs. He stopped following for a moment, then jogged a few steps to catch up. Is she hurt?" Ryan asked. Not the response Marco had expected, but he figured, why not tell? She passed out when she learned that her grandmother had died. At least that's what the doctors told me. I have to see her, Ryan said. You have to stay hidden. Marco kept walking. People are looking for the flying kid. Ryan grabbed Marco's arm. I have to see her. Marco glared back at him, not sure if Ryan could see in the dim light the amount of pissed offness he felt. Ryan didn't back down. It's your funeral, Marco said and continued to walk. Ryan stumbled slightly, trying to keep up. So, Shay's your girlfriend, he asked, panting as if walking was too much for him. Marco tried to sound casual. It started when she asked me to help her. You were in jail, I believe. But then her sister and grandmother got sick, and now I'm kind of all she's got. He watched Ryan's face change, watched the realization sink in. Does she know I was in jail? The douche looked like he was about to cry. Marco threw him a bone. I didn't tell her. Ryan nodded. Thanks. Like I did it for you, Marco thought. The med ward was now in Harry's department store, according to the senator's last announcement. Marco maneuvered through the service halls and between the empty stores with ease. Ryan followed silent as a shadow. They only communicated when Marco stopped in front of the door marked Harry's, level 1, and then Marco merely held his finger to his lips and cracked the door open. The space before them seemed empty. It looked like some back area. Shelves of shoe boxes lined narrow corridors. We're clear, Marco said. Ryan nodded, and they both slipped into the stockroom. They followed a path between the stacks of shoes to a swinging door which opened onto the main level. What had been the shoe department was now lined with cots and walled off from the rest of the showroom floor by a curtain wall. A young guy with his arm in a sling dozed in a corner. Otherwise, the room was empty. Must have been where they treated the riot victims, Marco said, waving toward the only space in the curtain wall. Why do you think that? Ryan followed a step behind. No bodies. I had the flu, Ryan said. I survived. Marco glanced back at him. You're lucky. Behind the curtain wall was a makeshift hallway. The entire sales floor had apparently been divided into rooms, using curtains salvaged from the paper clips. Which way? Ryan asked. Does it matter? Marco said, feeling defeated. He turned onto the hall leading away from the front of the store, hoping security was stationed there and nowhere else. They'd checked 5 rooms when voices reached them from another part of the curtain complex. An unauthorized entry was logged through a door off the service halls. We're looking for a fugitive. Ryan grabbed Marco and dragged him into the nearest room. Through some wonderful twist of fate, the room contained Shay and her sister, both asleep on hospital beds. Ryan's face fell. Is she sick? He whispered. No, he said quietly. Ryan stood on the other side of her bed. She asked you to help her, he said, staring down at her face. Help her do what? Escape. Marco took her hand. If there was going to be some battle between them for her, he wanted to claim ground early on. Ryan's arms dangled at his side. Did she say anything about me? She never mentioned you. Marco was being honest, though of course he knew about them, had seen them all lovey-dovey outside the grill and shake, and he worried, or at least a very small part of him was trying desperately to ignore worried, that if she opened her eyes right now and saw them both, she would choose Ryan. Ryan was caught between kicking Marco's ass for touching his girlfriend and concerned that the dweeb had actually, through some horrible cosmic joke, won her from him. You obviously didn't help her escape, he said. What did you do? Marco raised his head slowly. I was there for her when she needed someone while you were off skydiving from the rafters. I saved her from being crushed in the riot. Ryan did not consider himself a particularly competitive person off the football field, but seeing Marco's grip on Shay's fingers filled him with a primal instinct. He had an inkling of the brain space Mike lived in every day, a place where everyone was a threat or a target, where every move you made had better put you closer to your goal. Judging by Marco's hold on Shay's hand, Ryan sensed that there was little Marco wouldn't do to keep her. Ryan decided that he better play it conservative after all. His survival and that of Mike and Drew depended on the weasel. If she's not sick, then why is she hooked up to that machine? Ryan asked, playing the safest card he could. I told you, she got crushed in the riot. I saved her. Footsteps stopped outside the curtain wall, and Ryan dropped to the floor and crawled under Shay's bed. Sure they were looking for him, yet when the guard stepped into the room, he said, "Marco." Marco shifted his feet. That was all Ryan could see. "Who's asking?" Marco said. "Why would security be looking for him?" "The senator." The guard stepped forward, but Marco went toward him without waiting to be dragged away. Ryan was thankful that Marco did not alert the guard to his presence and merely walked with the man out of the room. He crawled back up standing. Shay groaned softly. Was she having a bad dream? What horrible things had happened to her while he'd been running around like an idiot? He should have stayed with her. She needed him. Not anymore, he guessed. Not now that she had Marco. But Shay liked him. He was sure of it. Marco had to be a stand-in at best. Ryan would win her back. A part of him wanted to shake her awake right now and demand that she dump Marco and run away with him. They would hide out in some corner together. But he didn't let himself do it. Instead, Ryan leaned forward and pressed his lips to her forehead like a promise. "I gave her a sedative, so no matter how long you take to kiss her, Sleeping Beauty is not waking up." A large nurse stood in the door in the curtain wall. "Sorry," Ryan mumbled, jerking himself to standing. "I'm a friend." The woman folded her arms across her chest. "I would hope so." "I'll go." Ryan was ready to burst through the curtain to get out of there, if that's what it took. The woman thankfully stepped aside. "Don't let me catch you in here again." Ryan shuffled out, glancing behind him to see the woman disappear into Shay's room. He debated eavesdropping to make sure Shay was okay, but not wanting to tempt the nurse to violence, decided to exit while he still had the option. He grabbed a bottle of pills from a tray. What kind of pills? He had no idea, but he figured he'd better return to the grease and suck with something or risk having to explain his failed expedition to Mike. Ryan had a feeling Mike wouldn't have a lot of sympathy for his nearly getting nabbed while checking up on his would-be girlfriend, especially when Ryan's whole goal was to steal her from the only person in this mall Mike seemed to trust. The security officer led Marco up to the third floor, then toward the skating rink, which was closed, according to a piece of paper taped to the door. The end of the third level was opposite the more exciting part, which offered movie theaters, a bowling alley, restaurants, including the Grill and Shake, a bookstore, the arcade. The officer stopped in front of a nondescript metal door with a pane of glass in the wall next to it, behind which sat a bored-looking guard. Marco's guard signaled to him. The door buzzed, and the guy opened the door for Marco. "After you," he said. Marco walked through, eyes wide and ears open. This was like the most wonderful, unexpected recon opportunity ever. Every question he had about what the hell was going on in the mall, the answers were somewhere in this cluster of offices. He tried to absorb the information through osmosis. One room held cots, another had piles of what looked like weapons or shields. In the next, an older guy was futzing with computer wires between 4 cubicles. The one after that, 3 cots. Opposite the computer room was a dark closet with flashing screens showing the feeds from the mall's closed-circuit camera system. Then at the end of the hall, the senator. She had a stack of paper on her desk. A heavy-set man in a uniform sat on the other side of it. "We've done all we can do to convince people," she said. Setting aside a sheet, "It may take a few days, but they'll see that this plan is going to work, and they'll get in line." "You're the boss," the man said, sounding like he was not sold on the idea. "I'm not establishing a police state," the senator responded, "at least not as the first option." The man got up and left. The senator waved at Marco. "Come in," she said, pointing to the chair the heavy-set man had abandoned. Marco sat. The senator folded her hands on her desk. "You know what's stuck in my mind?" Marco did not like the smug look she was giving him. He'd stared down enough authority figures at this point to know the palette of what looks they displayed and what each one meant. You can only be in so many scuffles before you're just hauled in every time there's even a rumor of a fight. Not like Marco really had a choice in whether he got the crap beaten out of him. Unsure of where the senator was hoping to lead him, he gave her a non-committal shrug. "How exactly did you get into the back of the paperclips during the riots?" This was not the question Marco was expecting. I saw an open door and went through it." He tried to be as vague as possible. The senator's eyebrows flicked up. That's interesting, because it occurred to me that maybe you can answer not only this question, but the question of my missing security card key. Margot swallowed. This was not the usual interrogation session with a guidance counselor. This was like staring down a shark. He sensed that one false move and she would tear his head from his body. His brain spun into high gear. He couldn't afford to give up the card. Without it, he would lose Mike, lose any freedom he'd gained, forget being able to protect Shay. But they could search him and find the thing without us saying a word, and where did that get him? Better to play some hand than none at all. So he slid his fingers into his pocket and felt around for his old card key. He pulled it out, leaving the universal card safely tucked away, and he placed it on her desk. I only wanted to help Shay, he said, trying on his most pathetic voice. And those Spider-Men who tried to get out onto the roof? Oh, crap. She pushed the card back toward him. Don't hyperventilate just yet, she said. I have a job for you. Margot did not take the card back. What the hell did she mean by job? The senator leaned back in her desk chair and stretched her hands behind her head. I have a bit of a problem, Margot. There are around 4,000 people in this mall, and I only have a small private security force to control them. As we saw yesterday, when the people want to take over, they can. I'm trying to pull this place together out of that chaos, but I can only do so much. People who don't want to jump on my bandwagon, well, I don't have much of a way to get them on by force, so here's where you come in. I have a hunch that you don't have to answer, but my hunch is that you know where my Spider-Men are. I don't want to waste my precious police resources hunting and trapping them, so I'm offering you the job. You want me to hunt and trap the guys who tried to escape through the skylight? He tried to play it as dumb as possible. No, she said, smiling. I want you to keep tabs on them and keep me informed of any future problems they plan on causing. And I get to keep the card key? You can keep the card key. This deal was like a freaking dream come true. Not only was he not in trouble, he was being ordered to do exactly what he was planning on doing anyway. His agreement with the douches was now blessed by the cops, and Mike and the others would never be the wiser. Okay, he said, taking back the card key. The senator held out a hand. Glad to have you on board. Margot took it. No problem. There better not be. She gripped his palm and stared hard into his eyes. I'm trusting you to be on my side in this. Do not cause me to regret that trust. She released Margot's hand. I won't, he said. Come back here tomorrow after dinner to check in, she said. Then she turned on a computer screen. Margot assumed he was dismissed. The guard who had let him in was waiting outside the door. He shuffled Margot along the hall and led him out the front, depositing Margot back in the mall. The hallway seemed brighter now. Maybe it was the late afternoon sun coming through the windows of the food court. Maybe it was the relative emptiness of this part of the mall. Margot took a deep breath, like he was sucking in the light, then trotted down the hall toward the escalators, his sneakers bouncing off the tiles like he was made of light himself. 5 p.m. Having worked in her sexy outfit for half a day, Lexi longed for the comfort of her old tee and hoodie, her old baggy jeans. Every time she bent over, she felt like some part of her pants were going to split. The pink sweater itched now. Maybe she was developing a rash, and it seemed to suck in the heat, so she was sweating buckets. Lexi had never felt less sexy. Caught number 7,000,002, done. Maddie flopped onto the flatbed, then winced. I think I'd rather sleep on the floor. Lexi found it bizarre how everyone was eager to help. Even the whiny girls like Maddie who bitched and moaned still did their assigned job. It was like everyone felt bad about the whole riot thing, and couldn't we put that behind us all and pretend nothing happened? After clearing all the clothing from the sales floor into the stockrooms, people asked what they could do next. The guards found new jobs for everyone. Some were given the sucktastic job of cleaning the bathrooms. Others were much less smelly jobs of collating travel-sized toiletries into Ziploc bags, and a few trusted old ladies were given the job of pulling suitable clothes for sleeping from the piles in the stockroom. Lexi and Maddie were assigned to the largest team charged with setting up the cots. Lexi sat beside Maddie. At least we're not cleaning the Johns, Lexi said, swabbing her forehead with her sleeve. I heard that half of them were clogged with, Maddie put a finger on Lexi's lips. Stop. TMI. Lexi shrugged. You said you wanted all the gossip. Not the gross stuff, Maddie said. Keep the gross stuff to yourself. She looked at Lexi like Lexi was the only gross thing in the place. Okay, Lexi mumbled. No gross info check. Maddie looked around the room at the other women and the girls setting up the cots. They were people of every age, but most looked like they were in high school or college. Lexi held still, waited for Maddie to break the silence. Instead, her mother's voice boomed through the space. For those registered at the home stores, dinner will be served at the first floor courtyard outside the Borderlands Cantina. If you've not been registered, you will not be served. Please take this opportunity to register at a home store. Dinner service will end at 7. Maddie hopped off the cot. I'm so hungry, I don't even care what they're serving. Lexi hauled her butt up to follow Maddie, but stopped when she saw her dad, Arthur Ross, hobbling toward her. Hey girls, he said, cheery as ever. Lex, I finished the database, but now I need help inputting the information collected at the home stores. Can I borrow you? Lexi's stomach growled. Can I start after dinner? Her father checked to see if anyone was looking. No one was shoving their way downstairs to grab some grub, then pulled a box of frozen burritos from his satchel. A special treat for working through a meal? Maddie perked right up. Can I help? She asked, eyelashes batting. She grabbed Lexi's arm and gave her a pleading look. Don't leave me alone to eat the camping food. Maddie could seemingly turn her friendship off and on whenever she liked. A minute ago, she looked at Lexi like she was no better than the crap being sucked out of the toilets. Now she had clung to her like they were best friends. But Lexi told herself that she was just being sensitive. Maddie was her friend. They'd been having a great time right up until 5 minutes ago. Of course I won't leave you, Lexi said. Maddie snatched the box of burritos. Knew I had you whipped, she said, kissing Lexi's cheek. Now where's the microwave when you need one? After nuking the food, Lexi and Maddie wolfed their burritos as they followed Arthur to the first floor. Dad had a laptop set up on the folding table serving as the entrance to the JCPenney. Beside it sat one of the guards responsible for checking people in. There was a healthy line snaking away from the counter. It had taken several hours, but people were finally convinced that it was safe to come out into the open. Or maybe they were just that hungry. It didn't matter. Each gave the guard their name and in return was handed a special white mask that fit like a dome over the nose and mouth and a small bottle of hand sanitizer. Of course they show up after we've cleared the whole place and set up their beds, Maddie snarked, scarfing the last of her burrito. At least they've decided to join the forces of good, Lexi thought. If her mother's orders had failed to rally people, what then? She refused to think of it. Maddie was wrong. The senator was in control. Look how people followed her commands. There would be no more riots. She would not end up buried under the rubble again. She had Maddie to watch her back now, right? Maddie picked up the first sheet in the pile beside the laptop and Lexi positioned herself in front of the screen. Maddie read the names and Lexi clicked the box in the database to indicate the person had checked into a home store, and then the box indicating which of the 3 stores they were in. After a half an hour of droning on, Maddie interrupted her and said, She's here. Is that a name? Lexi said. Scrolling through the list. Ginger? Maddie snarled. She's here. Lexi's jaw tightened at the name Ginger. Ginger had abandoned her, leaving Lexi to try to save the kids and the Abercrombie alone. Ginger had made her use the CB radio to call Ginger's dad, who caused a riot outside the mall and got Lexi in trouble with her parents and Darren. Her parents, everyone, in trouble with the feds. Ginger had ruined everything and now she was back. Lexi cracked her knuckles. Wouldn't she be surprised? Where else would she go? Stay in whatever hole she'd crawled into when she left me to die in the Abercrombie. All it took was one mall apocalypse to wreck a lifelong friendship. Maddie snuggled against Lexi's shoulder. At least some people are real friends. Lexi felt a warmth spread over her cheeks. Real friends? She didn't want to show Maddie how much those words meant. She straightened her back, jostling Maddie, who sat straight. Back to the grind, she said, sighing, and read the next name. Someone coughed in the line. The sound echoed like a bomb blast around the emptiness of the hallway. The guard at the table next to them looked up. Who coughed? He shouted. It was the guy who seemed lost this morning. Now he looked like a wolf with a scent. No one responded. Then a youngish woman waved. "She did," she yelled, pointing to a mom-aged woman in a flowery dress. The woman froze, glanced around. "I feel fine. I just need a sip of water." The rest of the people in line backed away from her, and two guards, faces in masks and hands covered in plastic gloves, closed in from the hall. "Really, I'm fine," she said, as if her body wanted to betray her. She coughed again. The guard grabbed her arms and led her out of line. The guard next to Lexi pulled antibacterial wipes from a container and waved them in the air. "Miss," he yelled. The girl who'd sold out the woman pointed to herself. "Yeah, you. Take these wipes and wipe down your hands and face and give one to everyone around you, then wipe the barrier where the woman was standing." The girl's eyes were wide, her mouth a thin, trembling frown. She obeyed, skipping toward on her tiptoes and then scuttling back to where she'd been. The others in line took their wipes and began cleansing the space. The guard turned to Lexi, sliding 2 masks across the counter. "Put these on." Lexi slipped the thing over her face and passed the other to Maddie, who followed suit without making a peep. Shay was shaken awake by Jasmine. "Dinner time," the nurse said, holding out a plate. A pile of what looked like reconstituted barf slid across the surface. "I'm going to be sick." Jasmine smiled and dropped the plate onto the metal table between Shay and her sister. "You had a visitor this afternoon, some boy." Shay's heart rate increased. "Oh?" But then she reminded herself that it was Marco. Had to have been. Ryan, even if he was still in the mall, had no idea that she was in the med center. Only Marco knew that. Her heart rate sank back to normal. "He's just a friend." "Seemed pretty friendly," Jasmine continued, the smug smile on her face visible beyond the borders of her mask. "He kissed you." Goose flesh prickled across Shay's skin. Marco kissed her? No, that was against the rules. If she had kissed him on the cheek, that was only to be friendly. He was taking things out of context. He was reading into her actions. Not that she really could blame him. She had been, in essence, leading him on. But what choice did she have? She had a sister to protect. She needed an ally. And to keep him, she would do whatever she had to. But she would say something to him the next time she saw him. There would be no kissing, especially while she was passed out. Or if he really needed a kiss, then only on the cheek. God, this Marco nonsense was the last thing she wanted to deal with. Why were boys so freaking needy? Jasmine laughed. "You look like you're deep in thought, so I'll let you think." She stood. "No," she said, not wanting to be left alone. "I was just thinking about the boy. Do you have a boyfriend?" Jasmine settled back on the gurney. "I'll tell you if you eat something." Shay lifted the sagging paper dish. "What is it?" "Chicken something," Jasmine said. "I had some. It's edible." "Are the white lumps chicken?" It's a safe bet," Jasmine said. "I say just close your eyes and shovel it in. You need to eat." Shay held up her wrist. "I have my trusty IV." Jasmine frowned. "You're planning to spend the rest of your life with that in your arm?" "Who knows how long that even is?" Shay wasn't sure why she said that. She didn't want to be negative. But it felt true, once said. She could die tomorrow, and wouldn't that be better than facing another nightmare day in this place? Jasmine's face softened, but still looked disappointed. "You have to stay strong," she said. "You have a sister to watch out for." She squeezed Shay's hand. "Things are going to get better from now on. The senator lady has got people working together." For how long, though? She had never been a bitter person, but now she felt like all that was inside her was bitterness. She pushed it down, conjured some happiness. "That's great," Jasmine smiled. "That's my girl." Shay shoveled a spoonful of chicken slop into her mouth and forced herself to swallow it down. "It's actually good," she managed, stifling a retch. "Now I know you're lying," Jasmine said, chuckling. "Here." She pulled a small leather notebook from the pocket of her cardigan. "I found this in the paper clips and thought you might like it. You look like a journal girl." Shay laid the spoon aside and took the notebook. It was a business thing, a kind of little book her dad used to take to conferences before he got an iPad. Opening it, Shay saw that the pen was one of those special ones that had a built-in light in the pen tip and a highlighter on the other end. She ran her fingers over the paper, which was smooth and blank. "Maybe you can write something about your grandma and show it to me." She glanced up from the beautiful blankness of the paper, tears turning the world to water. "Yes," she said, her voice catching on the word. Jasmine smiled and patted her leg through the thin blanket. "Then you finish your food. I'll be back in a half hour to check you out." She took Shay's wrist and gently removed the IV. Panicked, gripped Shay. "Don't I need that?" Why was Jasmine taking away her medicine? It's just saline, Jasmine said, and you're conscious now, so you can feed and hydrate yourself. We have to conserve what resources we have now that we're on our own. What if I pass out again? Honey, that was the effect of a sedative I gave you. One of the security guards said you looked panicked, so I gave you something to help you relax, but you're all better. Gave me a sedative? Like Shay wasn't already feeling totally out of it, the woman thought it was a good idea to drug her, and all better seemed a long way off if sedatives were on the table as treatment, unless this was all some ploy. Are you kicking me out? We need the bed for people who are in recovery. But what about Preeti? She'll stay for another 24 hours for observation, but then she can join you at the JCPenney. Shay's mind raced. She could not be turned out into that madhouse. She would not be left alone to be crushed by the masses. Where was Marco? She began to cry. It was all she had left. Don't make me leave. Jasmine squeezed her shoulder. You're a strong girl. Things are safe out there now. I wouldn't send you into harm's way. Shay did not trust this woman. Who was she really but a stranger who pretended to care just like everyone else? She was just another body to be moved around. She had to find Marco. How would help her? He would help her get Preeti out of here. He would help them find somewhere to hide. Jasmine continued spouting her plans for Shay's release. A guard will take you to the JCPenney if you want. No, Shay blurted. I can do it. She would not get trapped by one of those lunatics with a taser. She'd seen them blast people if any of their orders were contradicted. Jasmine brushed off her pants. If that's what you want. She walked to Preeti's bed and checked her over, pulse, temperature, blood pressure, lung sounds. Your sister seems to be doing fine. You can come back and see her in the morning. Shay was barely paying attention. She needed a plan. She was still wearing the t-shirt and jeans she'd stolen from H&M. Maybe her bag was under the bed. Jasmine, as if reading her mind, handed her bag. What did I say this morning? Shay snatched the strap. Jasmine grasped her shoulder. I told you that you have to trust someone. Shay nodded because that is what Jasmine wanted, but the woman was wrong. She would not trust anyone but herself. Who else could she really count on? Can I finish my food? She needed some more time to come up with a strategy. Jasmine sighed. Take your time. I'll be back in an hour to check you out. Good. An hour to plan her actions. She scooped the rest of the chicken mush into her mouth. She wasn't sure what food existed outside the med center. Who knew when her next meal would be? She dumped out her bag and sorted the items. Wallet, iPod, headphones, dead cell phone, contact solution in case, children's Tylenol. The bottle stopped her brain cold. She'd last held it to Nanny's lips in an attempt to drive her fever back. How deeply she failed Nanny. What an idiot she'd been to think she could save her. What good were her plans, really? She'd screwed everything up. Killed her grandmother, nearly killed her sister. Better just lie back and let them all take her. Preeti stirred. Shayla. Shay froze. Caught between the sadness inside, sucking her against the bed, weighing her body down, and the need to show her sister everything was okay. Shay? Preeti's voice trembled. Are you here? Jasmine was right about one thing. Shay had to be strong for Preeti. She sealed up the sadness like a sandwich bag. Poof, the emptiness felt like joy. Shay sat up. I'm here. Preeti, who hadn't even been really awake, rolled over. Tell Mom I'm not going to school. Okay, Shay chirped. She stuffed all the crap back into her bag. Her hand stroked the smooth surface of the notebook nestled amid the sheets. Did she even need it? She felt so clean inside. Take it, whispered the sadness. Shay slipped it into her bag. Ryan tapped the pill bottle against his legs as he padded through the service halls back toward the Grill and Shake. At least he thought he was heading back to the Grill and Shake. Ryan tried to stick to the path Marco had taken, but all the halls looked alike, and without Marco's card, most doors were closed to him. He was beginning to consider the possibility that he could be lost. There were stores' names printed in block letters on some of the doors, but that information was of little use to Ryan. It's not like knowing he was outside the candy hut gave him a clue about where he was relative to the Greasons suck. He wasn't a big mall person, not like other people. Funny to go to the mall maybe 5 times a year and end up getting quarantined in one of those visits. Typical Murphy luck. Ryan's older brother, Thad, had a theory about Murphy Luck. Murphy Luck was always to blame for an interception. Murphy Luck explained why Thad could drink a 12-pack of light beer and not get buzzed. Murphy Luck is why Dad was such a dick. The man couldn't even keep a one-day construction job without pissing someone off. Crap like getting lost in the service halls of a mall qualified as undeniable Murphy Luck. Voices echoed from around the corner, not wanting to find out if they belonged to security. Ryan pushed open the nearest exit door. It opened into a second-floor hallway next to the Sports Authority. Feeling like perhaps Murphy Luck had taken a time out and that he should not be in the mall or the hall, Ryan decided to upgrade from his crusty climbing clothes. The store was empty. No salespeople, no shoppers, and more importantly, no insane looters with guns. Things seemed normal, like there had never been a riot. Were people really following the mall's leaders' orders? Not that it mattered to Ryan. Mike had made the call that they were staying under the radar. Ryan was not going to rock the very small boat of protection he'd found in this hellhole, even if it meant also staying under the thumb of Marco. Mike had watched his back from minute one of this nightmare, and Ryan had owed it to him to stick with his plans. They were teammates, and a team was a powerful thing. He would find some way around the Marco Shea situation. He grabbed a pair of basketball shorts and a t-shirt, then decided why stop there. They were obviously taking up residence in the place that might want to change of clothes. He grabbed a duffel bag and packed it with some t-shirts in his size, with a bunch larger for Mike and Drew, shorts, socks, and boxers, then went to the back to look for some sneakers. As he rounded around the corner of one floor-to-ceiling shelf, he discovered a person who had not been as lucky with the flu. It was a man, old, his dad's age. His face was bluish, and blood had dried in thin trails from his nostrils. Puddles Ryan did not want to know the origins of pooled around his legs. He smelled terrible. Ryan scrambled back to the other side of the shelf, his second dead body in as many days. Why was this happening to him? To any of them? Forget about it. There was nothing he could do to help the guy or Mike or himself, any of them. Best to just forget about it, move on, find the sneakers and get the hell out of there. He found a pair of sneakers his size. The things cost $200. In the real world, he couldn't have ever hoped to buy them. Screw the shops at Stonecliff. The place owed him some freaking nice sneakers for all the crap he'd been through. The coast was clear outside the store. Ryan heard voices down below, but just regular talking. He checked over the railing and saw people sitting on the floor with paper plates. There were dead bodies lying around, and these people were at a goddamn block party. It was like Bizarro World. The ground seemed to pull away, and Ryan felt a wave of nausea course through him. He found a bench and parked his ass on it. He was not fully recovered from the flu. He pretended he was fine, but there was a constant ache in his muscles, and his brain went fuzzy if he moved too fast. He shook it back to the grease and suck. He waited for the nausea to subside, then shouldered the bag and tried to look as inconspicuous as possible. There was no one on the third floor, so Ryan walked faster, nearly running into the grill and shake. The dinner area was empty now. Ryan headed straight into the kitchens. Mike and Drew were sitting beside a small pile of boxes overflowing with bags of defrosting chicken strips, crackers, and what appeared to be a handle of vodka. "Looks like you got all the food groups," he said, dropping the duffel. Mike looked up. "What the hell took you so long?" He stood and grabbed the back of Ryan's head, pulling him into a hug. "You okay?" Ryan shrugged him off. "I'm fine." Mike's hearing was a little intense. "I'm not at death's door." "You were at death's door, idiot." Mike shoved Ryan's head. "I'm fine, really," he said, trying to ignore the throbbing. Mike's jostling had ignited in his skull. "I got us some clothes." Drew rifled through the duffel. "Packers!" He pulled out a jersey. "What kind of crap are they selling in this mall?" Mike said, grabbing the bag. It was the one point of dissension between Mike and Drew. Mike was a Giants guy, and Drew had been raised a cheesehead like his dad. The only fight Ryan had seen between the two started when Mike, in a drunken haze, pissed on Drew's cheese wedge hat. Drew had tackled him, busting a hole in his basement wall. The fight ended when Mike promised not only to buy a new hat, but to wear a Packers jersey for a week. "Don't eat your jocks in a twist," Ryan said, rubbing his temples. "There's something for everyone." Mike dug out a Giants jersey and pulled it over his head. "Now we're in business." Jumbo shrimp comes through in the clutch. Drew tugged on some new socks. Ryan ducked into the bathroom to change and splash water on his face. He slurped some from his cupped hand, then examined himself in the mirror. He didn't look good. Pale, bags under his eyes. He'd bench himself, but this was no game. There was no bench to rest on. When he came back, Marco had rejoined their crew but was sulking in the corner. He was smiling but still looking pissed off. That guy was weird. Now that the whole gang's back together, let's mosey to our new quarters. Marco clapped his hands like this was some class trip. Ryan was not ready to follow Marco blindly, but what did the senator want to see you about? He said. Marco gritted his teeth. He did not want to share that particular tidbit with Mike, but it figured the douche would not allow even that small lapse in information. Perhaps he twisted the knife too hard on the whole Shay issue. She asked me if I had a stolen card key. She'd seen me in the back hall during the riots. I was trying to save my friend's life. Marco looked purposely at Ryan, who looked a bit piqued. The senator was suspicious, so I gave her my old one from the grill and shake. It was a decent lie. The douche did not question him further and slogged over to a duffel bag. Mike nodded. Nice thinking. I thought so. Marco was even impressed with himself. The mall speaker squealed and announced the end of the dinner in 15. Please return to your home store for distribution of new clothes and toiletries. Marco checked his watch. It was 6:45. A little early for curfew if you asked him, but nobody was asking, so we better get the show on the road. I have to get back before anyone cares that I'm gone. Calm down, Taco, Drew muttered, pushing himself to standing. Marco would not let that nickname back into their vocabulary. Marco. The nickname had sounded kinder. The three douches hefted their boxes of nutritionally dubious food and followed Marco into the service hall. Marco decided to risk the elevator. He was now a sanctioned mall employee of sorts. Who was going to stop him? He led them down into the parking garage, then wove through the rows of cars to the far wall where he knew of a storage closet for cones and other parking-related crap. The door to the room wasn't even locked, so Marco swung it open and was greeted with a cloud of stale air. He flipped on the light. The space was the size of a minivan and was empty, save for a stack of cones and some small sandwich board signs used for indicating that the lot was full. There's no window, Ryan said, poking his head through the doorway. How are we supposed to breathe? Mike pushed past him into the space. It's perfect. No one will bother us here. Glad I packed the vodka, Drew said, pulling the bottle from the box. I'll come back in the morning to check on you guys, Marco said, dusting off his hands. He didn't want any residue from that hole following him up into the mall. What are we supposed to do for a bathroom? Ryan's voice sounded squeaky, like he was about to cry. Marco would have liked to see that. He would have liked to record it for Shay. Here's your big, strong boyfriend. The parking garage is your oyster, Marco said, waving his hand. Mike grabbed Ryan by the shoulders. We'll manage. Mike held out a hand for Marco to shake. Marco took it. See you in the morning, he said, then shut the door on them for the night. That's where I gotta end. I'll post soon. I promise.